So thank you everyone for tuning in to yet another episode in which I talk about issues related to public transportation and not transport because our topic today is American and not European. It is Gateway, the Gateway Tunnel, the Gateway Project. Uh, it is a really good example of a very good project done very poorly. And this is relevant to essentially everything about New York City infrastructure. Um, Connections with housing, yes, they're there. Connections with the layout of the city, yeah, absolutely. Connections with the topic that I'm probably best known for, construction costs. Yeah, this is an extraordinarily expensive project, and some of the reasons are reasons that are also seen elsewhere in the region, primarily in the city. Um, Issues of timetable design, infrastructure design on mainline rail. Yeah, that is there as well. That's going to bleed into my next project, which is talking about high-speed rail in the Northeast Corridor. And I kind of want to start by saying that somehow the high-speed rail connection with Gateway is the weakest among the topics that I've just discussed. It's there, but you can do one without the other, and there are many ways you can just separate them. Uh, Yeah, exactly. You just need to. You don't actually. Right. The thing is, the United States doesn't really do 125 lanes through black neighborhoods these days. It mostly will just de-urbanize. No need to. No need to demolish the Harlems and the Bed-Stuys when you can just create a situation in which New York does not need to exist and people can just work in office parks. And yeah, it's less productive, but I mean, taking a hit to GDP is an acceptable price to some for not having to reform your infrastructure, construction, and procurement. So anyway, I mentioned all these topics, and I kind of want to explain how Gateway relates to them. So first of all, what is Gateway? Um, I'm zooming in on what is not Gateway, but is next to Gateway. So Manhattan, New Jersey. There are only two mainline rail tracks between Jersey and Manhattan. It's called it's this tunnel. It's called the North River Tunnel, or the North River Tunnels. The Hudson River, one of its older fashion named, is the North River. They're paired with something called the East River Tunnels, which carry traffic from east of Manhattan. This is mostly commuter traffic on the LIRR, but also some intercity traffic on Amtrak via this line, which is called the Hellgate line. Currently only carrying intercity Amtrak traffic, but there's a program to also put commuter trains on it from New Haven and Stamford called Penn Station Access. Another example of the right project done wrong. There are four tracks under the East River and only two under the Hudson. You might be seeing some black lines denoting railways here. These are PATH. These are Captive Rapid Transit. They only go as far as Newark, and a large majority of people commuting from Jersey to New York don't live in Jersey City or Newark and need to rely on these tunnels, the main line. The next lower crossing of the Hudson by rail, uh, I should say the next active crossing of the Hudson by rail, is near Albany. There's also a bridge around here that I think is no longer in use. It's this one, I think. Um, Let me see the bridge. Okay, the bridge seems intact. Just that the line, I believe, is abandoned, and even if it weren't, it would be at best a little freight bypass, not a usable passenger line. Um, Now, as you might expect, many people do this trip, and this is therefore the busiest mainline rail in the United States. Um, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I remember that the bridge was intact, but okay, yeah. So, um, I will talk about the slots issue later. I promise. But I will say that this is viable in one specific way. So bear in mind, uh, 24 trains per hour, maybe not now, but before Corona, entered from Jersey to Manhattan at rush hour. Uh, they were busy. How busy? Well, hard to exactly compare because the commuter rail stock is not really designed for comfortable standing. This is not like subway trains. It's not like S-Bahn trains here or RER trains in Paris. Rather, these are trains designed around the assumption that everyone should have a seat, and if there are more passengers than seats, well, you can stand in the vestibule, but it's uncomfortable. Um, now the LRR Metro North enter Manhattan on average with empty seats, which means some trains don't have empty seats. Passengers are more likely to see a busy train than an under full train. It's just statistical, right? If you think about it this way, in an extreme case, I'm running two trains into the city. One train is half full, the other train is 150% full. On average, the trains are 100% full, but the passengers, three quarters of them are on the train that's 150% full. So, as perceived by the passengers, the trains are 125% full. So there is that little bit of bias. Again, statistical bias. It's not some kind of. It's not anything nefarious, but on average, these trains have empty seats, and they define capacity as not even all seats are occupied, but 80% of seats are occupied because they have 2 and 3 seating, and nobody likes the middle seat. So they complain when the middle seat needs to be occupied. On the subway, of course, much higher passenger density. And the point is that on New Jersey Transit, the passenger traffic density is nowhere near that of the subway, but it's higher than these. It is the people do have to stand often for a long time. I mean, not hours, but 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Yeah, it happens. Um, yeah. So the plan has been for about at least 20 years to quadruple these tunnels. Gateway is the current name of the project. Now, when I say quadruple, first of all, to be very clear, I mean going from 2 to 4, not from 2 times 1 to 2 times 4. No. This is 2 extra tracks, which are to be built roughly across this alignment. So I sometimes have a map of what I think New York should be building. It is, I have several such maps. It is here maybe. This is just extra lines upon lines. The red line is supposed to represent the existing tunnels, and the green line gateway. This is a little bit of a fib. Um, just FYI, the currently planned, the currently designed alignment is not exactly parallel. It is a little bit to the south. So the idea is there are 2 tracks here, for the most part, between the portal and Newark. There are sections that are 4-track, but there's a critical section we're going to get to in a sec here, Portal Bridge, which is 2 tracks. The idea is you connect to the same line. You build a little bit farther south. I've heard the explanation is redundancy. They don't want to be too close to the old tunnel because what if, and the what if is never made very explicit. I will say that the norm in many places is to build closely parallel. You look at the approaches to Tokyo, for example, and so it's on the other side of this reservoir. So you go like this. So the plan is to go like this. Bergen Line Avenue is something that I think they should build in the Gateway Tunnel. It's not part of the plan, unfortunately. And then it moves back into the Penn Station yard. There is a box here. So the thing is, at Hudson Yards, they've overbuilt so much of the rail yard that they built a specific section that is the only place that the tunnel can approach. It's around here, maybe. And then they will enter Penn Station. This is the project. It's called the Hudson Tunnel Project. Gateway is much bigger than, and I do want to explain what it covers in addition to this tunnel. And I will just say, the tunnel is a good idea. It's a good idea that they're building this tunnel. It's just not a good idea that they're building it for, I believe, the current cost of the Bear Tunnel. Is about $14 billion. The Hudson Tunnel project is about 15 or 16. It includes the Bear Tunnel. It also includes the exact box here that, again, is mostly already safeguarded. It's unusual in the United States that they safeguard routes, but this was done. Safeguarding is much more common in Europe. In Britain, for example, one of the standard things that they do when they make long-term plans is they safeguard the route of the tunnel, which means that they do not let private or other public actors encroach on the space that would be used for the tunnel. This can be done indefinitely in Britain. In Italy, it can be done, but only on a 5-year scale, so that they can't squat on land forever. In the United States, it is just not done usually. to the point that some really important piece of infrastructure, which is Transbay Terminal in San Francisco, uh, is currently compromised by the fact that there has been encroachment, that they did not safeguard the road. So you can kind of see the train box underneath the terminal center, which is currently for buses. But the buildings here encroach on this. The original plan had been that after the trains entered from the south to this terminal, they would be able to loop back to have some kind of through service, maybe to a second Transbay tube, which is a project that San Francisco desperately needs and desperately wants to build. But because of the lack of safeguarding, it's just so much harder, and the plans have been modified. So essentially, it's going to be bumper tracks. The current plan for rail tracks into Transbay. So this is generally a problem in American planning. Uh, However, this problem specifically is absent from Gateway. And the reason is that by the time they built Hudson Yards is Bloomberg era urban renewal. At the time, they already knew that a tunnel would come. The tunnel then was called ARC and was subsequently canceled by Governor Chris Christie, who was concerned that the entire project complete complete not just with the tunnel but also an entire cavern underneath Penn Station where they think they need extra tracks. They do not. It would cost up to $13 billion, and the state would be on the hook for cost overruns. The budget was nine. The worry was that there would be cost overrun of $1 to $4 billion that the state would be on the hook for, and he wanted to cut the gas tax, or rather, he wanted. I don't think he had a gas tax. He wanted to keep the gas tax low and still on the same budget expand highways. So he looted the budget for ARC. This also let him grandstand and create a trend that Republican governors cancel rail projects that are strongly associated with some kind of democratic stimulus. And then immediately Amtrak stepped in and started a project that looked better in that they deleted the cavern, but then due to Amtrak, the planning did not get any better. And this project is called Gateway. So this is already safeguarded. They're also planning to shut down the old tunnels for a while for long-term maintenance. The route of the north-south rail link is kind of safeguarded as well. And this is because the main worry about safeguarding in America is private encroachment. That's what they're not safeguarding from. But public encroachment requires there to be some kind of public infrastructure, and that's not really done in the United States. So they did actually safeguard a route beneath the Big Dig. And it has not been disturbed since, as far as I know. Now, it's possible that they have done this, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has just not figured this out, but the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has attempted to make arguments for why they can't build this. They massively overestimate the cost. And so the fact that they didn't say it suggested either they're incompetent or they can do it, most likely both. So you're asking about the difference between ARC and Gateway. So ARC was new tunnels, plus one of three options. They thought that service to Penn Station alone would not be enough because Penn Station only has 21 tracks. Yes, they think that is only for a station fed with ARC 4 tracks in each direction. And so they had one of three options for what to do beyond. Alt S for Sunnyside, where they would build a 5th and 6th track in addition to these 4 beneath the East River to connect over to Sunnyside, hence S. Alt G, where the 5th and 6th track would do what the map that I say that it should be doing does, go to Grand Central and run through to Metro North to unify the systems. This was called Alt G and is the best. Unfortunately, Metro North and New Jersey Transit did not want to share anything for the same reason. The just opened East Side Access Tunnel for the LIOR to get to Grand Central. This is this purple line up until Grand Central. They built it as a deep level cavern called Grand Central Madison, tens of meters beneath Grand Central rather than to the existing very oversized tens of tracks station because the LIR and Metro North did not want to share either. So already we're seeing some examples of bad planning, agency turf battles. The alternative that was chosen for ARC was Alt P for Penn Station, where instead of through service beyond Penn Station, it would just be extra tracks in Penn Station in a cavern. Um, and the cavern was deeply criticized by various advocates. They mocked it as the tunnel to Macy's basement over how deep it was. And this was used by Christie as an argument to remove to end the project rather than to, let's say, remove the cavern and just have them share tracks in a more constrained but still viable environment. The thing that I talked about on Saturday's stream about Euston Station in London, where they think they need extra tracks and they do not. And so there was ARC. Gateway deleted the cavern, which was really unpopular. It also deleted the complete lack of integration with anyone else. And instead, Amtrak became lead agency. So first of all, the plan for Gateway is to be, I don't know if for Amtrak to use the trains, for trains that don't go north of New York, but certainly Amtrak should be, in the plan, capable of using the new tunnel, whereas the ARC tunnel was New Jersey Transit only, to the point that at one point, amidst rising costs, they deleted the track connection between the new tunnel beneath the Hudson and the existing Penn Station. So it would be a tunnel where the nearest track connection would be on the surface on the Jersey side. So you either take the old train tunnel to Penn Station or the new one to the cavern. So they did restore connections to the existing Penn Station. The LIRR and New Jersey Transit themselves are bad at this as well. It's not just Metro North being bad. Yeah, they did dig too deep. I keep saying that at a very labyrinthine train station that I'm very familiar with, I should cosplay as the Minotaur with like a big buffer battle axe, designed to be probably more realistic than the fantasy battle axe, oversized. They're very, very good for felling trees because maybe two blades, so when you run out of one, you switch, but not good for hitting people because by the time you actually manage to swing, they've already stabbed you. But at Grand Central, if I were to cosplay, I would not cosplay as the Minotaur, I would cosplay as the Balrog. Yeah. And so the plan is with Gateway improved in the sense there's a track connection. It was restored. However, they still believe that they need more tracks. So what they did is they have this plan for this block, the one immediately south of Penn Station, this one, block 780, it's called block 780, to be demolished in its entirety and be replaced by additional tracks at Penn Station. And the project this project is part of Gateway, not part of the Hudson Tunnel project. So it's beyond the 14 to 16 billion. It's part of the broader Gateway, which is about 30. I believe it's about 8 of it. It's called Penn Station Expansion. They believe they need the extra tracks because they think 21 tracks are not enough. This is incorrect. Again, and the plan is maybe in the far future, long after this is built, maybe they can build additional through service to Grand Central, some kind of high-speed rail plan, which has long been de-scoped because it was budgeted at $300 billion just for high-speed trains between Boston and Washington. The project that I'm currently in early stages of is for how to do a plan to do such a thing for 20. I mean, the budget is 30 from the infrastructure stimulus, but it should be doable on 20. So Gateway is these new tunnels would increase capacity. However, because they've de-scoped so many things from the earliest stage of it, they're not actually doing full 4 tracks of capacity, and this is a problem. So the main issue is they need to expand from 2 tracks of capacity to 4. The Hudson Tunnel project provides that. It absolutely does. And the problem is they need 4 tracks elsewhere, including on the surface. Again, this is a two-track line with four tracks around Secaucus. Um, the choke point is Portal Bridge. It is a two-track bridge here. There have been plans that were technically not the same as Arc or Gateway. I mean, they got full into Gateway, but they were separate from Arc. To replace this movable bridge with a four-track, maybe five-track span, and now it's going to be replaced with a two-track span with expansion to, I think, five tracks later. This is supposed to cost billions. I want to say about a. Let me actually check, but I want to say it's about $1.5 billion. So Portal Bridge replacement cost, and I'm going to talk about the Bergen Loop in a sec because Bergen Loop is one of these extra project. The project is estimated at $1.8 billion. Yeah, yeah, no. So to be very clear, this is this is an environmentally sensitive wasteland, wetlands. Uh, However, can you tell how eco-sensitive this industrial zone is? Like people have this idea that this is like the most environmentally sensitive thing ever, and no, just look at the land use. Yes, there's a little bit that is, but it's the same thing, by the way, with transit-oriented development in Secaucus that they keep saying that they can't redevelop because it's a protected area. What exactly about this highway loop looks protected to you? Parking lot, same thing. Warehouses, uh, rail yard. What exactly about this screams too environmentally sensitive to redevelop? Yes, this corner, absolutely keep it protected, but there's so much other stuff. They just are looking for reasons not to do this, not to do transit-oriented development here. The latest excuse is resilience, because it's supposed to be climate vulnerable. It's about look. It's like you can see down below here. It's around 3-4 meters above sea level. Honestly, if sea levels rise 5 meters, there are way worse things to worry about than the bottom level of new transit-oriented development towers. Get some grip. Um, so this is supposed to be an extremely complex project, which it actually is not. It's a bridge. This is a bridge. It's a fixed span bridge. This should not be $1.8 billion. This should be low hundreds of millions with four tracks. And then everything else should be pocket change. It's normally about $5 million a kilometer to add a track. So I believe the going from one track to two is about 5, and going from 2 to 4 should be about 10. This is 10-ish kilometers. Now this is on the surface, and Portal Bridge is a bridge. It's 12. But that's just this area. So this should be trivially easy, and apparently is not. This is not Borders. This is not English greenbelts. English greenbelts are in areas that are just farmland that some TOF has memory of. This is actually, I believe this is actually environmentally sensitive. It's just, so it is broken by highways, but you can actually have endangered species within sight of a highway. Um, so I don't, so I don't think it's stupid to protect this or this, or even this. It's just that people think that this is not developable, or this, and this is the stupid part. Um, Oh, and yeah. Oh, okay. And the 1.8 billion is just for two tracks, not four. Yeah, figures. Um, yeah, yeah. I know that the origin. I know the origin of Greenfield is not actually the top, but it's essentially they complain about urban sprawl, aka London getting too big. Um, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a big difference. I mean, the London Greenbelt has golf courses. Um, which is incredibly frustrating, but this is not golf courses. Are there American urban golf courses? squatting on valuable land that should be used for other things. Yes. Uh, Not generally New York, though. LA, absolutely. This is supposed to be the second largest business district in the city, which I mean, somewhere between 30 and 50,000 jobs. Century City, golf course, golf course. Um, I believe one of them is the tough golf course where they wouldn't even admit Jews, and then the other is the newer golf course that would admit Jews. So you can't close the one that does admit Jews because then they will say it's anti-Semitic, and supposedly you can't close the other one. Again, I don't remember which is which because that's supposed to be old money. In practice, you can close both of them very easily. NIMBYs, even rich NIMBYs, never have as much power as everyone says they do. Um, generally, when you have someone who generally when you have a group in power or a person in power who everyone says you can't piss them off, what is actually meant, or this is the same thing in San Francisco, what is actually meant is it's a huge crowd pleaser to piss them off. It just requires a politician who's willing to actually take a stand. You'll be surprised how cowardly politicians are even about things that are popular, as long as they require actually doing something and taking responsibility. It's frustrating. Um, So anyway, the gateway issue is not some kind of green belt. This is a real problem, except not really because, as mentioned, it's first of all it's on an embankment. You can just do wildlife passages. This is not expensive. In fact, there's a Boston commuter rail project called South Coast Rail that in its second phase, not the first one, slices through a protected swamp. Uh, I will never be able to get you the exact alignment just from gazing at Google Earth. So I will do this and ask that people not take these trip times as live. There are live schedules on most of these lines on the Transit Matters website. It's called regionalrail.net. Um, this is an older version, but the alignment I'm depicting is correct. Uh, Donor money is irrelevant. I mean, most donors are ideological in America. This is this is, for example, Nancy Pelosi. So in 2002, Nancy Pelosi, I think it's right after the midterm, Nancy Pelosi is elected, replacing Dick Jefford as the leader of the Democrats in the House. This scares some people because they think, wait, she used to be Progressive Caucus. She's from San Francisco. She's very left wing. She tried to pass Medicare for all in the 1990s. The Democrats just lost the election because they were too left wing. They weren't because the Iraq War split them among themselves, and this being late 02, early 03, the Iraq War is really popular. How come someone that left wing could be a good leader? And then it turns out that precisely because she is reliably ideological, she managed to get all the money from ideological donors, and that set up essentially a revolution in how Congress works. So anyway, there's a swamp. So I don't remember the exact location, but there are two swamps in this section. One easy, one hard, and even in the hard one, there's an Army Corps of Engineers study on this about how this line could be built. So the first demand is that it be electrified because the diesel emissions would be bad. This is why they split it into two phases. First phase, branching off of Middleborough with a really awkward dogleg. This one, because then we could stay diesel for longer, and Governor Charlie Baker, former Governor Charlie Baker, thankfully, is allergic to rail electrification. And but over here, they talked about wildlife passengers, but they also estimated the cost, and it was something like $5 million or $10 million. So wildlife passengers are not actually hard. Wildlife does not care about the train noise. The wildlife just gets used to the train noise. The train stays on the tracks. The tracks definitionally are not where the animals go. The passengers are easy. So it's not the big a deal. This should not be 1.8. From here to here, it should be, I don't know, 200. And so the point is that because this is being descoped, this is going to be left to tracks, as mentioned. Um, this is not going to increase capacity when built. This is the primary reason. There are also some issues on the branches. So there are many branches of these commuter lines. Uh, in theory, the branches can very easily feed 4 tracks. Um, there are 4 tracks on the northeast corridor around here. There are 3 on the Mars and Essex lines. Um, should be easy to feed 4 tracks from 7. Uh, not just on social, not just on cultural issues, on economic issues as well. I think there's an art. I mean, something. There's something about like how extremely wealthy donors are more averse to taxing very wealthy people than median Democrat or something like that. But on average, Democratic donors are to the left of Democratic voters, even on rural economic issues such as do you favor a universal healthcare system or not, or do you want to expand the welfare system somehow? Um, these are the donors are more consistent ideologues than the voters. Is getting it a priority? I'm not sure. So for capacity, yes. For capacity, generally you want to four-track everything except the hardest parts. You do the hardest parts last. Um, bear in mind, you can walk and chew bubblegum. You can do both of these at the same time. They're not the same order of magnitude as cost in cost. They're not one. One is not a substitute for the other. Um, it can be a bullshit descoping in this case, but it's not. But these projects are not meaningfully in competition for funds. And this can be done faster because this is not a tunnel, and this is. Uh, and so, again, it's not just this. This is the most important thing that they need to do to allow full 4 tracks of capacity. But in addition, there might be some projects on the branches. The most important is Hunter Flyover. Hunter Flyover is this one. It controls the connection between the Raritan Valley line, which is currently unelectrified and should be wired, and the Northeast Corridor. Uh, there's an annoying tendency in the United States to have flat junctions even on otherwise well-built lines. Uh, the Long Island Railroad and Metro North have these. These are always a pain. The most important, probably Northeast Corridor wide, is not even Hunter, it's Shell. It is this one. The combo of S curve and flat junction limits drains severely, and this they need to do a little bit of eminent domain to straighten this, and also grade separate this to permit much higher speeds, and also no dependency between inbound and outbound, and between inbound and outbound trains. The same thing needs to be happening on the LRR's most complex junction. It's called Queens interlocking between the Hempstead branch and the main line. Uh, this is also going to be harder, but I don't remember the name of this. I think it's called Mott Haven Junction, uh, between the Hudson line and the rest of Metro North. Right now, they kludge it in a way that the Hudson line, I think, I think the way this works is that the westernmost track always leads to the Hudson line, and then it's just reversible inbound or outbound depending on peak direction. Yeah, I mean the LRR and Metro North are part of the MTA together, and yet they both resisted plans to merge the two agencies, and they didn't play well at all for Grand Central Madison for East Side Access. Yes, yeah. Harold, no, Harold never had at grade conflicts with opposed traffic. Harold had at grade conflict with same direction traffic from the entering the other tunnel. This is Harold interlocking. It's the connection from this bifurcation to I want to say this bifurcation, but there's also the bifurcation being built here for East Side Access, which is along this route. So they do need to fix Hunter. This is important. This was pegged at 250 to 300 million dollars internally. They say 600 million in some Northeast Corridor doc, but this is a much. This is essentially an estimate plus what if contingencies. We're going to get to the what if contingencies in a bit. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I will talk about cost. I will very soon talk about cost. I just want to talk about the ancillary things in the regard. Again, it's this is the most important. Sorry, no, the most important is for tracking this. After that, it's fixing this junction to grade separate it. This is Hunter. And then it's just a few extra things in the range. They probably should just electrify more things. But at that point, it's just something you can probably get around with clever timetabling to keep the diesels off the main line, most likely. Um, and you probably want more to complete the electrification of the North Jersey coastline. Let me put my crown for a moment, just because it is accurate for the branches here. It's not there's nothing extra here. So right now trains are only electrified as far as Long Branch. This pretty short tail, it should be wired. They should also wire the Raritan Valley line, which is rather busy for diesel. So that way they don't need to deal with unreliable, low-performing diesels entering Penn St. Is important. This is going to be a crowded line. On a crowded line, you want to maximize your systems, maximize your schedule chops, maximize what is called collectively in Switzerland electronics, in order to postpone the construction of concrete, like tunnels, for as long as possible. And this means doing things like, so in Switzerland, they electrified everything in World War II already. So in Switzerland, electronics for present day projects means something different. But here it would mean things like wiring things, making sure the trains are all compatible. And this means good train sets, not old locomotives, to make sure that they can all meet the same timetable, the same aggressive timetable. And so the and so all of this needs to be done. Again, it's pocket change compared with the tunnel. They're just descoping it because of poor planning. So this project is again it's a good project done poorly. How poorly? Well, I've already discussed the issue of Portal Bridge and how the wrong things are being scoped. So now let's talk about unnecessary scope. I said already at the beginning that Penn Station is not really at capacity. It's being used very inefficiently, and this is why people believe it's at capacity. But the ability of a mainline rail terminal with limited branching to turn trains fast is much larger than believed. So there's something that I thought was not yet open, but apparently it already is open. It's Catalunya in Barcelona, and I mentioned this also in the previous video about Houston. Catalunya, I thought was 24 trains turns. I thought it turned 24 trains per hour, on a system that is mainline. It is a mainline rail system, but it's a very closed mainline rail system. It's on the very urban side of S-Bahn, by which I mean it does branch pretty far out into the suburbs, but it's I think it's only 3 branches on the line. I never remember this. And anyway, I thought it was 24 trains per hour, but apparently they've just released new timetables where it's not 24, but 32. But 32. This is the max. This is 2 approach tracks, 4 station tracks. There's a 5th track that is used for special trains, but the 32 trains per hour turn only on 4 of them. This one's Catalunya. There's a line that is signed as a metro line, L7, branching out, and then there's L6, and there's the main line with its own branches, the ones that are called S1, S2, S5, S55. So this is the maximum that you can squeeze. If you don't want, I mean, even 24 was a limit value of 32, but I mean, for example, they did 16. Sorry, they didn't. It's not that they did. They do 16 in Paris on Osman on Osman Salazar, and this is not with extreme branching, but there's branching here. There are a bunch of branches here. So if they build Gateway, which again they should build that tunnel. They should build it better. They should And I'm going to get to procurement in a moment, but they should especially make sure to procure it very well, which is not the present day American practice, and to value engineer it well. But they should build it. They should just not expand Penn Station. Penn Station expansion is a waste of money because there are 4 tracks at Penn Station that are deeded to terminating trains. There's some more that New Jersey Transit uses, but there are 4 deeded to terminating trains that do not connect to either of these 2 pairs of tracks under 32nd and 33rd that then feed into the East River tunnels. Um, and they can turn fast. Um, they need to do some Penn Station. They need to add some pedestrian circulation in Penn Station, but it's not even that hard, and most of that was already done for Moynihan Station Phase 1, the cheap one, the one that did not involve building an entirely new concourse that's very snazzy and also has nowhere to sit. And um, so the upshot is the Penn Station expansion is just several $billion that should not just be descoped. I mean, they should be descoped, but they should be just removed, not necessary. If for some reason you're itching to demolish all these buildings, demolish them for high-rise transit-oriented development on firma, not on top of rail tracks where the costs are going to be double, but on firma. Um, this is bad. Now, in chat, people are already mentioning the Bergen Loop, and I do want to mention the Bergen Loop because it is a really good example of a really bad idea. What is the Bergen Loop? Somehow, whenever it's something they do want to do, the fact that this is wetlands stops mattering. So I'm going to boot my crown for a moment and ask people to understand that everything colored light blue, everything colored turquoise is lines where even the branches don't currently exist. I mean, this exists and barely has any traffic. This is a real branch that currently goes like this, or maybe occasionally like this. This is pure crayon. This is a weird dogleg. This is a line that exists. There have been plans to run service on this line, which is called the Northern Branch. Not as far as its natural end of Nyack, because it's a pure Jersey project, but only as far as Tenafly, to permit people in these suburbs to take the train down. Unfortunately, it would not include any connection to Manhattan. It would just be connecting to, you see this little rail section. This is an old tunnel that was repurposed for light rail, for the Hudson Bergen light rail system. So the idea would be to do this and then wend around to get to Hoboken or Jersey City. It is unpopular here, both because of a combo of NIMBYism and I mean, for people around here, yeah, they would take the train to Manhattan. They don't see a point in taking the train to Hoboken or Jersey City. To at least some extent, they have a point. I mean, the jobs are mostly in Manhattan, not in Hoboken or Jersey City. This is called the Western Line. Real line. It's just has so much freight traffic that it probably would be more difficult to reactivate. This is why you see they have like versions of this, version 3, and this is a different one. The concept is version 2. The concept has the Northern Branch, and also connected to the yellow, not the turquoise line, but no West Shore. That's why. But either way, we can look at it with either crown. Doesn't matter. These 3 lines all exist. They're called the Erie lines, Main Line, Bergen County Line, Pascack Valley Line, and they don't serve Manhattan. Right now, the way they work is they're completely diesel. They go to Secaucus, which is the transfer point. The transfer point is very poorly constructed and poorly used because it has internal fare gates. So to cross between these trains, which again exist these trains, well, the red ones exist, you need to pass through internal fare gates rather than having a fare gate free system like at Jamaica Station on the LIRR. Also, you need to change elevation, but the fare gates are another annoyance, and this is because American commuter rail is used to a system where conductors must check every ticket. They don't have fare gates, or rather, they don't have fare gates at the stations. They don't really know how proof of payment works, even though it absolutely works in the United States on light rail. They just are not used to doing it on commuter rail, and commuter rail is extremely institutionally conservative and resists change. And so, because of that, they don't. So because of that, they don't uh, let passengers cross cleanly. and they require a fare to make sure you have a Penn Station bound ticket. So few people take the trip, and people talk about one-seat rides to Manhattan. Now, instead of building this tunnel and then also this tunnel, for the cost of what most countries will build all of these tunnels, including the one to Staten Island combined, they're just building one tunnel plus a few extras. One of these extras is the Bergen Loop. The idea is the trains are gonna go to Secaucus and then do a loop de loop around here to enter Penn Station. This is about as slow as you would expect. Again, somehow it's okay to to build over a wetland when it's something they really want. Shows you exactly how committed they are to environmentalism when they say things like it's really difficult because of the wetlands. And the problem, and this would still not involve electrifying these lines, is the stupidest bit. The idea is that these would stay diesel. They bought some magnificently expensive and not very good locomotives called the ALP 45s. Dual mode locomotive. It's it's a Bombardier locomotive, and this is only used in North America because nobody in Europe needs such a monster. Are they going to tell me what the cost is? Apparently not. Or maybe let me check. ALP 45 DP New Jersey Transit cost. I believe they cost $9 million per locomotive. Yep. 8 additional locomotives at a cost of approximately 70.5. This is just shy of 9 per unit. The cost for a locomotive here is about 5. You can string a 4-car electric multiple unit for that cost, almost. So, and that's also with the coach, and the electrical multiple units are not just locomotives, they're also coaches. And they would provide more power, and 4 such cars provide way more power than one locomotive. Electrical multiple units are just incredibly powerful. What is the power? No, not the head end, but the actual power output. 4.4. Okay, so it's 4 continuous, max 4.4. 4 cars worth of electric multiple units would be probably about 4ish, maybe a little bit less. Okay, but they would also provide passenger seating. So yeah, and so they somehow like this dual mode because it's an excuse not to build. Yeah, exactly. They have they have multiple elevation changes. This is not designed for even. I mean, crossing stations can be optimized for very fast connections. You need a lot of capacity, and the issue is that the regular passengers, are going to know where the elevation changes are, so they're all going to crowd the points closest to the elevation change, which is going to be especially big of a problem on these trains, because essentially it's all going to be connections. These trains, whatever. But all of this is solvable. And they just don't know how to do this because they're bad at planning. And yeah, it's a thing where it's the same thing, by the way, that they do in San Francisco. So another example, and this is even without mainline rail. This is pure urban rail of this kind of internal fare gates bullshit. San Francisco has these 4 BART stations in city center. Now, these are not pure BART stations. These are Embarcadero, Montgomery Street, Powell Street, and Civic Center. And all of them are shared with Muni Metro, which is a subway surface system, Stadtbahn, if you will, where it's on 2 levels. 3 levels rather. Level -1 is a mezzanine. Level -2 is Muni. Level -3 is BART. And the only way to get between BART and Muni is via the mezzanine. So you need to go up and then down. You can't just go up one level. And again, internal fare gates. This is horrifically stupid. And this is especially so because in San Francisco, I believe The city managed to do a one city, one ticket system. So if you take BART within the city, then it costs the same as taking Uni. I'm not sure the transfers are free, but I think the costs are the same. Uh, and yet, internal fare rates. So, um, okay. So you're asking if the platforms are theoretically interchangeable. Um, yes, all the platforms at Penn Station are wired with both LRR third rail and with what's it called, and with overhead wires. Uh, why am I having random icons in my Dropbox? Okay. Uh, and so, but I believe even tracks 1 through 4 have LRR third rail, even though they're not reachable from the LRR tunnels. And likewise, the highest level uh, tracks, the highest number of tracks, I think 19, 20, 21, are not reachable from the Jersey tunnels, but are wired. They're not just third railed. Yeah, there are yeah. In London, they do this bullshit as well, and London also has absolutely no bus rail fare integration. Please fix that. Um, but um, but anyway, going back to this, so they have this Bergen Loop idea with these dual mode locomotives that are not reliable at all. They are not very good perform. They don't have very high performance. Well, they're locomotives. Um, they are really expensive. You should just in general don't ever buy a locomotive for passenger rail. These is an obsolete technology. All passenger rail, maybe except night trains, but night trains are. I don't want to call them a dinosaur, but night trains are somewhat of a dinosaur. Um, maybe not a dinosaur. Maybe a. I shouldn't call them a dinosaur because the dinosaurs are extinct. Maybe what's a good example of a living fossil? Coelacanth. Um, these um um so essentially so you can vaguely considered vaguely consider locomotive passenger locomotive or night trains in general to be these. Um, they're very much a living fossil, and the um and the point is that except for these, okay, so intercity trains should be mostly high speed rail. All high speed rail in the world is one of three things: electric multiple units, which are by far the most dominant because it's the only thing available in China and Japan. They can be talgos, so these are inherently locomotive based, but they run largely just in Spain. They have a tilt mechanism, which is kind of nifty and would be useful in the Northeast Corridor if it weren't incompatible with everything else, including the platform height, the talgos being inherently low platform trains. And the third is TGVs. These also include the Korean derivatives. The TGVs are essentially are essentially vendor locked to SNCF. Nobody else buys that shit. Nobody else seems interested in buying that shit. South Korea is already transitioning to electric multiple units. Intercity trains that are not high speed or are still modernized also tend to be EMUs. For example, in Germany, that's the intercity trains that we're getting. They're multiple units. They're not locomotive hauled. Um, and especially important on commuter rail because commuter rail makes more stops. And one of the advantages of EMUs over locomotives is um, much more of the train's mass is supported on, or train's weight in this case, supported on driven axles. And this matters for electrification, not for electrification, it matters for acceleration at low speed. Um, this means you can have a much higher acceleration rate initially. It goes up to about 1.2 meters per second squared. Um, you can go even beyond that, but then you're getting into passenger comfort and even safety limit, uh, which is also why in the United States when there are EMUs, all wheels are powered, like on Metro North and the LIR. In Europe and Japan, so in Japan it's only this way on the Shinkansen, on the um, commuter trains in Japan, which again they're basically all EMUs. Um, in Japan, I think the only locomotives that they get are for night trains, so they have something like 20 something locomotives in the country. Uh, and so the EMUs there, only about half of the cars are powered because, especially in Japan, the commuter trains tend to be very subway style, so they're low power because they don't need high speed. They need to just go 100 kilometers an hour and serve every kilometer or something. In Europe, um, they're higher performance because they're at regional scale maybe, so they need to go 160 and stop every few kilometers. So they need very good performance to be competitive there. Um, and then you can have, and then about every other axle is powered roughly. Um, and this is essentially the situation for commuter lines in the New York area. So you need that performance, you need EMUs, you need to electrify, and don't build the loop. The loop is going to be just too slow. Make this a better transfer. This is not going to be expensive. So delete the scope, delete this scope. This is, I think, the two most important things to delete. Uh, oh, right, Morocco. I forgot. Yeah, Morocco is kind of a turnkey TGV. Yeah, yes, definitely. And this is also what you see in China, right? Where they have these high-speed trains that run on the high-speed lines. I don't remember if they do it every night or only weekday nights or something, or only weekend nights, like the Berlin U-Bahn or something. But they do run overnight on a few lines. And yeah, it's just sleep, and yeah, it's exactly this. And no, it is not actually too loud with distributed power. I've not ridden the high speed trains in China, but I have ridden high speed trains with EMUs, as have you. They're not that loud. The loud parts are not the distributed power. In Germany, the loudest bit is that in tunnels there's a little bit of ear popping because in tunnels there is a sonic boom a little bit, and so the trains need to be pressurized. The TGVs are somewhat pressurized. I don't think the ITSAs are. The Shinkansen trains are even better pressurized um, to prevent this kind of ear popping. And so delete scope, build tunnel. So again, bad planning concerns excessive scope, things that are considered important, things that are like regrettable to delete, but they're not actually important. This has zero to negative transportation value. This has 0 to epsilon. The reason I'm saying it might have a positive transportation value is that one seat ride does have some value. It's just going to be extraordinarily slow. Just seriously, don't build this. Build the transfer, and honestly, on the possibly just in the cost of what they think it's going to cost to build the Bergen Loop, a sane country would be able to build this entire tunnel, the yellow line. So this is an existing line. So it's abandoned, but it's pre-exist, and then uh, just build this. It's gonna cost. It's gonna cost 10 figures, but not many billions. Done right, a few billions. Um, this cavern station done right is probably about $1 billion-ish. Bear in mind, most places would be the most expensive station ever built, just not in New York. So, this is issues of just bad scope. Now, I want to highlight. Now, highlighting the bad scope, not just to slag on the project, but also to highlight a broader issue that does lead to high construction costs. I promised I would talk about construction costs. Um, the issue is it's very easy to define the scope to include things that are not actually necessary. And then you get lazy and don't think about how to save money. I talked about this in the context of High Speed 2 on Saturday and the overbuilding of new tracks at Euston Station. It's not really necessary. They can improve their operations. They can essentially learn better from the Shinkansen how to turn trains faster. I mentioned in Barcelona they turn 32 trains per hour on 4 tracks at the terminal, but these are commuter trains. Japan does this not 32-14, a lot less, but these are intercity trains. Not just any intercity trains that are not fully sealed, because the Shinkansen normally is on a different gauge from the legacy network and is self-contained, but not north of Tokyo. North of Tokyo, 2 branches do share tracks with legacy trains, called mini Shinkansen. So max out the electronics again. before you think about concrete, like adding tracks, which is just never going to be necessary. Um, and the thing is, there are all these small things where they sometimes define the project to include them. Now, I'm not going to tell you what they are for Gateway for the simple reasons that I don't know. I have done a deep dive on some projects in the United States, and I can list you a litany of problems. Second Avenue Subway, for example. Uh, I can list you a litany of problems, and if you want to learn more, go to this is an advertisement for my own work, so I guess it is paid because I can. Okay, here you can see me pay for advertising. This is 50 euros. I'm going to move it from one side of the table to another. Here, paid advertising for the Transit Coast project, which on the 6th of February, in 6 days, will have a very long case written by myself, by Eric Golden, and by Elif Ansari about Second Avenue Subway and lessons therefrom. Uh, so there I can tell you about specific things where the scope included things that did not need to be there. Um, for Gateway, I know they exist because I know what the cost is and I know what it should be. I don't know what they are. The other thing is in Boston for the Green Line extension. That project is done. The line is open, but our case study unit is already done on the site that I just linked to, transitcosts.com. If it's another advertising, another 50 euros move from one side of the table to another. Then here, they included some really bullshit scope. What do I mean by bullshit scope? For example, there was an expectation that the stations, I don't think they're depicted on Google Earth, that the stations be neighborhood signatures. So they were built in the first iteration of it, which was kind of canceled and rebooted by Governor Baker, who was very good at short-term stopping the bleeding and also making sure that in the long term the problem would persist. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So what they did is they insisted in the earlier iteration, in the Patrick era iteration, that the stations be neighborhood signatures. So they were built, first of all, oversized. Oversized means more civils, more systems, electric wiring, and so on. And also, they were not standardized in any way. And even the good things that Boston does, like when they build new commuter rail stations. For example, they did some on the Fairmount line to provide more service to people in Dorchester. When Boston realized that maybe a commuter line with very little other traffic passing through Dorchester should have trains that are usable by city residents. Also, when they take low platform stations and they raise their platforms to provide accessibility. This is essentially the same scope of project as building a station entirely anew. A proportion of the cost, a sizable, if not enormous one, I was told between 2 and 7 million out of between 20 and 25. This was in 2019, so this was an inflation cycle though. Come from design because they don't have standardized designs. They did not have them for here either. So it's an extra cost. And often there's this belief that standardizing the stations means that they're going to be Spartan, so that's very not nice, and you don't want to impose this on the city because people deserve nice things, and how nice things never mean being able to afford more lines. It means stations where you don't standardize the placement of the vertical circulation and the placement of the pumps, of the water pumps if it's underground, or the placement of the pipe fittings in the walls. This is what it boils down to. It's nothing that looks nice to the passengers ever. These supposedly overbuilt stations, again, not on GLX because they've descoped that, but on other things like Second Avenue Subway, they are not especially nice. So a lot of it is maybe sometimes they define the scope too much, and again, this is more a station problem than a tunnel problem. But in the tunnel too, they can just avoid standardizing things. It's very easy. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, neighborhood signatures, I mean, I mean, Canary Wharf on Crossrail is a neighborhood signature, um, severely oversized. It's nicer than these, and that too is not nice. There's a little garden in the roof of Canary Wharf. I mean, how much extra did it cost to build that? Um, and yeah, part of it is a lot of this is again it's these kind of um, extractive local actors, the kinds who, if they golf, they want their golf courses, who very clearly don't use city services. They don't care. They just want to be seen as having gotten money for things that they can say look nice. Again, these are things that don't, and I don't mean these are things that look nice, like some kind of urban renewal type installations, or maybe look nice from afar, but are actually shit for usability. These are not things that have good form and poor functioning. There are things that actually have poor form because the stuff that's not standardized is escalator placement, escalator vendors, elevator placement, elevator vendor, um, various behind the walls types of systems, um, finishes where they're either micromanaged to hell or not at all specified, and either way you're spending too much money. Um, this is the problem. Um, Then you have entire problems with procurement, which are steadily getting worse every time. I just heard, and by I just heard, I mean Eric and Elif just heard, that they spoke to some person working for a subcontractor who readily said, yeah, this is I think it was about a pump. This pump is $50,000. If the contractor were to install it somewhere in, let's say, Europe, it would be $50,000. In the United States, with various regulations and with a lot of red tape and with procurement bullshit, um, the same pump is not 50 but 85, and you can find ways to increase it 85. It's not. It's worse than 1.7x. You can make it worse than 1.7x. So yeah, just individual items. Like the procurement is so red tape driven, and these people don't know how to do this. They either over specify, so this is too much micromanagement, and nobody wants to deal with the bullshit, or it's under specified, and then the contractors have no guidance. If the contractors have no guidance, they design defensively and they build too much. Um, Now, I highlight defensive design because this was something that we've seen elsewhere as well. This is not a purely North American problem. This is not even a purely uh, English speaking problem. Okay, first of all, wait, the court. Uh, okay, let's go over these questions one by one. Are local actors explicitly calling for full mezzanines? No, full mezzanines are not local actors. Full mezzanines are an American tradition dating from 1930s New York that is widely believed to be necessary for circulation and fire safety, and in fact, isn't. You don't need them. You might need a mezzanine level in some cases, but the mezzanine level just needs to be at the exits. Um, Remember NFPA 130 requirements, so fire safety for public transport stations. I shouldn't say public transport. This is about North America. Public transit stations. Turkey has the same rules. So technically, the rules in Turkey are they took two American standards, NFPA 130 and the other I think it's NFPA 107. One is for transit stations, the other is for buildings, and the rule is whichever is the stricter applies. Um, uh, I am amused that as a Dutch person, you say coffee shop. That you say coffee shop. Um, they barely have they barely have 7-Elevens in America nowadays. They have some, but the but at this point, 7-Eleven is, I think, mostly an Asian thing. I think the company itself just moved its HQ to Japan eventually. Uh, I mean, they exist in New York. There aren't many of them, but yeah. So what you're thinking of is probably a cafe. Um, Okay. I've never actually used public transit in Belgium unless you count changing between Eurostar and ICE at Brussels South. Uh, I didn't really get to see much. It was a short connection, and I barely made it. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, technically, lots of people get to a safety point. So, um, yeah, Sweden too. Sweden has many, many, many 7-Elevens. Um, but I don't remember if I've ever seen a 7-Eleven here or in France. Uh, I used to see them a bunch in not Boston, in Providence, but not that many. In New York, there are. But anyway, um, so they have this bullshit procurement. I hear this in the context of MTA things, but it's equally bad for Port Authority. Um, it's I don't think it's even just a New York problem. That might be a pan North American problem that the procurement is just broken. Again, they either specify or over specify. They don't know how to oversee the contractors. The contractors know this, so there's a lot of defensive design involved. Um, the agencies are run by people who don't understand the subject. They're generalist elites who jump between subjects and are not very informed about this specific issue. They do not know how to speak the correct technical language with the consultant engineers, for example. So and this is something that the private contractors and the consultants understand. It's not that they're even trying to exploit the system very much. It's just that they don't get good guidance, and so they do everything. Um, and this is a problem, and this is something that uh, sometimes even messes up rolling stock, which is supposed to be easier because the specifications are ridiculous. SEPTA had this RFP for buying new train sets that ran into hundreds of pages. I think it was 500 pages. They don't need 500 pages to say we need this many EMUs. They need a few pages to say we need this many EMUs. This is the schedule ordering. If you want more detail, maybe a few tens of pages, but that's it. So it can never be read by one engineer at any of the vendors. So this is just extra red tape, just understanding the specs in the contract, as opposed to, hi, we want single level EMUs. We need this capacity in passengers per hour. The performance specs should be this, where this should be something that all of the standard, in this case, single level EMUs in Europe do. And I say Europe because American rail regulations um, are Europe plus a little bit of red tape at this point. Nobody uses them because the commuter rail agencies are run by ARC conservatives. Is it ARC conservatives or Arch conservatives? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, in Berlin we don't call them kiosks, we call them spetties, but yeah, I'm familiar with what a kiosk is. I did live in Israel. Um, but um, but anyway, yeah. So they overspecify even the rolling stock sometimes, and this is where Stadler uh, complained. And I'm gonna look for the reference for a sec. Is not in our document. That's gonna be released. That's gonna be released in 6 days. Um, Let me find the I have again. I have no. This is something else. Uh, there was a Stadler. Yeah, this one. The challenges of the American market. Read this. This is essentially Stadler complaining that working with Caltrain was. They didn't use the word shit show because they're trying to be uh, couth, whereas I am Israeli and I believe that. Whereas I'm Israeli and I believe that failure to swear means you're not saying what you really think. Uh, Main differences U.S. standards. First of all, U.S. standards may need to be waived, but at this point, the U.S. standards have. This was written in 2017. The standards have been harmonized as of about a year after this was written. Uh, Operation. They like blowing horns at level crossings in the United States. There's a fix which is quad gates, but people don't think about it. It's cheap to do quad gates in America. It used to be half a mil. Maybe it's going to be 3/4 of a mil now. Uh, Very demanding informal customer. All expertise is outsourced. No simultaneous manufacturing engineering. Unknown QA expectations. Strong supervising. No delegation of tasks to manufacturing. AKA, Caltrain don't know anything, and doing business is a chore. This is something that I've heard and Eric has heard, and Elif has heard from uh, just about every contractor working with an American agency. They name the agency and say, "Oh, Caltrans is an night network worker." The MBTA, the MTA, Sound Transit. Um, yeah, these they don't have internal expertise, and yeah, this is the result. Uh, yeah, true. Yeah, fuck politeness. Yeah, the manual trapdoors are kind of a meme, yes. Bear in mind, the LAR and Metro North, sorry, the LAR is all high platform. Metro North is all high platform, I believe, with the exception of the Waterbury branch, this one, which is kind of a weird hagfish. New Jersey Transit, I believe, does have traps. The Northeast Corridor is all high platforms. The other lines are mixed. They should also, of course, raise all the platforms. That's not just a matter of capacity, just better service. And, of course, reliability, because if there's someone in a wheelchair, normally what happens is a passenger in a wheelchair shows up at the train station. The train station was designed by people who don't hate disabled people, and therefore the passenger and therefore the wheelchair user um, gets to use the elevator or the ramps. Maybe it's slightly longer path of travel if it's by ramp rather than stairs, whatever. They get on the platform, the train arrives, they roll onto the train without any external aid. Sometimes it requires automatic gap fillers mounted on the trains. This is something that exists actually in the United States at this point. Brightline in Florida has them. The FRA has been considering, I don't know what the result of it, but has been considering mandating that US wide. Um, they don't really add to the dwell time. They have them in Zurich on the S-Bahn, and dwell times are 30 seconds. Um, and so a passenger in a wheelchair shows up, they board unaided. You don't see that in the timetable. Why not? Because it doesn't slow the train. Now, what happens is that instead, when you have lack of level boarding, a conductor needs to lift them, and that's another 2, 3 minutes, maybe more. And so you need to defend against that essentially by having more slack built into the schedule. And the slack, and because this is a delay that can happen anywhere, you need to make assumptions on how many passengers in wheelchairs are going to show up. And as a result, the timetable is just going to be unreliable. And if the timetable is unreliable, trains enter merge points. This is a highly branched system and will always be such a highly branched system. It doesn't need to have 8 branches on one trunk because it could be separated into, let's say, 4 and 4 or 3, 3, 2 or something. Also, it's not actually 8 because 8 would include 6. So it would be, so with this, it would be, let's call it 3 or 4 branches depending on how you count local and express trains on the Northeast Corridor. And here it's 3. This is the Montclair Boonton branch, then Morristown, then Gladstone. Highly separated junctions as well. It's good. And so you only have 3 branches, but even then, it's a branch system. The trains need to make the merge points at specific times, and if they don't, then it's going to delay other trains. So it's important to be on time. How are you on time? You remove sources of delay. What are sources of delay? First of all, the train might just suck, so don't ever get anything other than an EMU. Second, raise the platforms. Third, grade separate junctions as needed. Doesn't mean you need to grade separate every junction. It's ideal, but you don't always need to. The important one here would be Hunter. How are crossing gates that expensive? I don't know. I don't actually know comparative costs of crossing gates. I just know that in the United States, I think the examples that I saw were Colorado. It was $500,000 to do not just crossing gates; it was quad gates, so gates that are on both that are not just on the right side of the road, but are on both sides, so people can't drive around because there are always some people who try to slalom their way around because they're trying to make Darwin Awards or something. And so like I say, civil engineering safety systems need to also be proof against people who are competing in the Darwin Awards. And so so the quad gates are needed. Again, it's about $500,000. Okay, used to be $500,000. Maybe it's more now because it was $500,000 in mid 2010s dollars. Uh, yeah, some stations north of Gorton Harmon. Yeah, this is. I don't think it's on the mainline station. I think it's only on the really niche stations, like the one, like what's it called? What's the one at the Appalachian Trail? It's Beacon or Cold Spring or something. The one is just one car and it's a flag stop. I think. Like the like Poughkeepsie and such are, I believe, high platform. Yeah, so the MTA used to have a lot of expertise, and they actually laid off most of it. They outsourced most of capital construction in-house expertise to consultants um, in the 2000s, I believe. So yeah, get your procurement in order. Don't add unnecessary scope, which again, something that's much more visible for stations, but can also be for other things. Um, get your systems cost under control. Don't over specify. Know how to manage a consultant. Know where you need to say we need this and all that, and know where they're the experts. This is the issue. Like you need. There's no. I mean, the problem is a lot of people want some kind of recipe that someone who is not a subject matter expert can do to run good infrastructure. And the answer is no. Just get the hell out and let the people who know how to do this take charge. This is essentially what needs to happen. And Gateway and then the problem is, this is especially a big problem for the biggest and flashiest project. Again, going back to Boston for a moment. Boston, the stuff that's small enough that it's not politicized, works okay. I mean, not amazingly well or anything, but it's. But you ask them to build a high platform station, they will do it. And then the big things, that's when they need to maybe do more in-house hiring for design review engineers, but that means bigger government. So Charlie Baker didn't want this. When we said before about the long-term problem. So in the short run, Charlie Baker absolutely managed to cut down the cost of the Greenland extension by removing a lot of unnecessary and also some useful scope. I think some stations you need to cross the tracks. There's only um, an exit on one of the two platforms, so you need to cross the active tracks of the light rail to get to the other side. Um, and but in the long run, what he did is he redid this um, as a project under a general contract. He did this as a project with a not general with something called Special Purpose Delivery Vehicle (SPDV), where he hired a really good project manager for it, John Dalton. Paid him a lot of money, but it's fine. It's what these people cost, and a lot of money was saved. And then instead of keeping the structure in house for future um, infrastructure mega projects that Baker himself never said no to, just maybe kind of they're just like that kind of chicken shit. No, things like electrification, things like the regional rail program in general, things like the north south rail link, which some people inside still want, and instead of keeping that in house, what they could do is just let it go to waste, just let the structure vanish. So each person's going to go to another project, and the social structure is going to vanish. A lot of it is after me the deluge kind of politicization. And the bigger, and again, the politicians, as soon as the politicians know that something happens, they will interfere in America and bad things will happen. Um, Much more independence of civil service is required, and this also means freedom from the political appointees who are generally morons. Oh, Breakneck Ridge, you're right. Yeah, it's called Breakneck Ridge, you're right. Appalachian Trail I think, is the other one like this on the Harlem line with the Hudson line. But you're right, it's Breakneck Ridge, not Cold Spring or anything like that. Um, or Beacon. Beacon, I think, might actually be a real station. Um, so they do need to do this better. And this is actually going to be difficult once the project has been announced. And this is also going to be a problem for the Interborough Express, the line that is, again, I'm talking about politicization. This is very clearly the baby of Governor Hochul, where like much of the problem has already been inflected. They made certain assumptions. Can they go back on the assumptions? Yeah, but it's telling people no. I know someone else said something. They don't know how to build infrastructure. It's the problem you see it sometimes with California High Speed Rail, where they defined the project poorly, in the mid 2000s because they thought that they would be able to just follow the um, main rail lines through the Central Valley because they looked straight on a map, which they are. I mean, they knew that they would need to diverge from the lines a little bit. This is one of them. Um, but the problem is that they didn't think about how they would need to grade separate through these little towns that are never going to get surface. And it's going to be very noisy and expensive to do so much grade separation. Uh, and then they realized too late that they need to diverge around and go around every town. But by then, they made implicit promises to farmers, and the farmers got pissed over the fact that there's unanticipated takings. Now, California Speed Rail has a freebie on this. The farmers are not a meaningful veto point because the farmers in California here are Republican. California is run by Democrats exclusively, so the farmers can go to hell. But in basically every other case, they feel beholden to these interest groups. And again, they're not. They can still tell them no. It just requires a lot of taking responsibility and willingness to take risks. These are not people who take risks. And as a result, the United States has shit infrastructure. And giving them more money will not make anything better because it will tell them what you're doing is good, keep doing it. And this is the big problem because a lot of these projects are really good. Some of them are actually necessary. Um, and yet, first of all, they're bad, and second, and then, like they're done poorly. Like the idea is good, but the execution is terrible. And giving them more money is an implicit, not even implicit, an explicit endorsement of the people running it. Um, this is the issue with costs. Now, I mentioned it's related to other things, right? So I mentioned there's going to be the gateway is going to be connected with issues of planning, issues of costs, issues of scheduling in high-speed rail, and I did promise at the beginning that I would go more into high-speed rail without gateway. As I said, gateway helps high-speed rail, but either can be done without the other. Gateway without high-speed rail is very simple. This is predominantly a commuter rail project. Doesn't really matter how fast the trains go to Philadelphia. Most of the trains are not going to go to Philadelphia. Most of the trains, certainly, I don't think any of the intercity trains should use Gateway. And this is because Gateway has to enter the southern tracks of Penn Station, which do not currently go through the East River tunnels. So how are you going to use them for intercity trains? Because these need to run through to Boston. Well, you can swap them onto onto tracks that do connect to Boston, but remember, you're very constrained here. You have to use a specific you have to use a specific box under the Hudson Yards complex that leads to the southern tracks, the ones that don't currently lead east toward Boston. So, if you want this to be viable to Boston, you either build the fifth and sixth track across the eastern, which is not really necessary. These tracks are not at capacity. They were not even at capacity. They were different. They were below capacity even before East Side Access opened, and now they're definitely not going to be at capacity. So why? You can do the Grand Central connection, which is what I would recommend. Again, the path of the green line here. This pre-exists. But I don't think this is actually good for intercity trains. This is going to be a rather low-speed connection, just because of the slalom through the underground of Midtown Manhattan. Trains here can run much faster, especially if there are no bumper tracks. But this is some annoying curve. Harlem is a four-track station, so 4 approach tracks, 4 tracks with platforms, and this means that timetabling it so that you're going to get intercity trains that don't stop at Harlem and commuter trains, which I think have to, is going to be really, really gnarly. So this is not a good path for intercities. I don't think. Whereas this path is not optimal either, especially with the extra stops that I think they should be building. This is something I think should be building. This is on the 1, 2, 3 Skip Pelham Parkway, Co-op City are being built as we speak. This can be 4-tracked. So this is easier. And so this is not, I don't think, a very good path for intercity trains. So the intercity trains should stay on the old tracks, and then the new tracks get probably stuff that is not Northeast Corridor. I think the plan has been that maybe I should start the Mars and Essex train. So these three lines, one, two, three, and then this line, Raritan Valley, feed the new tunnel, and then the intercities and these commuter trains feed the old tunnel. Again, it looks different with how I'm drawing it because I'm assuming another tunnel for these trains. But if the purple line here doesn't exist across the Hudson and just is east side axis, then the correct way to do it is green, 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 red. Yeah, exactly. It's all G should be pure commuter. It's also because the other issue is that having two stations is really good for spreading the load on a train. Really good for capacity issues this way, and the intercity trains are going to be less crowded because generally everyone will have a seat. Or rather, everyone will have a seat with Gateway. I'm mentioning issues of Gateway interacting with high-speed rail, but I said there's also possibility of intercity trains, more intercity rail service without Gateway. How? Well, um, high-speed trains are long. They're 400 meters. They're 16 cars. Why? They don't have. The answer is they don't have a lot of stations. So you don't need to to lengthen, not widen. You don't need to lengthen the platforms at very many places. You just lengthen the platforms at the few stations that they serve. This is in a way in which high-speed rail is oddly much more like local rail than like regional rail. Local trains being very controllable. Subway trains, for example, they're captive shuttles. This is why, in some extreme cases where some trains need to share tracks with other trains, and I mentioned this in a previous video about the LARR, high-speed rail and very local trains. I was mentioning the Port Washington branch, this one, of the LARR make good partners on trunk lines as long as there are no local rail stops. Just because they're both very controllable and therefore are less likely to run off schedule than a much more open regional rail network. And so the point is that regional trains are more limited in their length than are high-speed intercity trains. I emphasize high-speed because usually high-speed trains are more captive. Again, there are different levels of captivity. So the Shinkansen are the most captive. The not entirely south of Toki they're entirely, but north of Toki even then mostly. Um, there are gradations of captivity. In China, they do run through, but at this point, the system is mostly completely on high-speed tracks. Korea is high-speed trunks, but with more through service to older lines. France, same thing. Germany is an extensively open system, and Switzerland doesn't really have a high-speed rail brand, even when they do build, let's say 200 kilometer an hour or even 250 kilometer an hour tunnels. They don't really conceive of them as special brands. It's just more intercity service. And so in Switzerland, I bring this up, one of their electronics before concrete ideas was to run more bi-level intercities, and this is because they couldn't widen, sorry, not widen, I keep saying that word, they couldn't lengthen so many platforms because it's such an open system. Now, I don't think bi-levels are really viable in the Northeast United States case. They work better with low platforms as in Switzerland. Not low as in American low, but low as in 55 centimeters low. Places where I will get to in one sec, I promise. Not so these 55 centimeter platforms work okay with bi-levels. High platforms, as on the Northeast Corridor, don't. They would have to be split levels, like the bi-levels on New Jersey Transit, where there's an intermediate level at the end of the train. So you're not getting as much, and and you can't quite do the superliner trick where you board from the lower level and you move between cars on the upper level. And so it's not. So it's just harder, and also the uh, busiest lines actually have to run single level trains because it takes too long for passengers to get out of the train on a bilevel. In Switzerland, they're actually transitioning to single levels on the most urban local lines in Zurich. As a result, in Tokyo, the only stuff that's bi-level is green cars or first-class cars on the commuter trains. In the Shinkansen, they attempted to make them work as bi-levels, and they couldn't. So it's just single level. And I bring this up because so anyway, don't use bi-levels, but that's a given for intercities. I bring this up because it means the intercity trains can be longer. They're not going to make that many stops. It's going to be what? New York, already long enough. New Haven can be lengthened. Stanford, I think, can be lengthened. Providence can be lengthened. Boston, I think, is already long enough. So not a lot of stuff to rebuild as far as infrastructure goes. So obviously, you would want the maximum capacity by making the train as long as possible. So you can make 16 car trains on commuter trains. Some trains can't even go more than 8. New Jersey Transit, I think, is about 10 or 12. So the point is that you're actually going to get more capacity out of an intercity train than on a commuter train. And this means that if you replace not many, but some commuter trains with intercities, and I've talked about this before on my how to integrate high speed rail with commuter trains outside the New York region. Um, the when you do that, you can potentially remove not that many, probably about 2 trains, the 2 express trains that go to Trenton, to go New York to Trenton, and replace them with intercities, because the intercities are going to provide that service with much more capacity. You just need to make sure to sell standing tickets, which it's fine. Germany sells standing tickets. Hell, in Japan they sell standing tickets, just have a premium. Um, so when you do that, it works okay. You can't do it too much. You can't abuse this too much, but you absolutely can do, instead of 4 intercities, 20 commuters, 18 commuters, 6 intercities. Uh, so this is high speed rail without gateway. Um, in the long run, you should do high speed rail and gateway. It's just that gateway has this kind of problem with benefits chasing costs. They just announced that the benefits are $19 billion. In general, never believe benefit monetization, not monetization, benefit monetization means something different. Benefit calculations on local and regional public transit, the numbers are always going to be fictional, even when people are honest about this, and I don't think these people are. It's just way too hard to calculate. Um, and but yeah, it's always nice that the benefits somehow always manage to make to find themselves slightly higher than the cost. And um, so the so the point is that with the gateway benefits, one of the things they said was that they absolutely need to shut down the old tunnels for long-term reconstruction, which is justified by Sandy, by salt incursion from Hurricane Sandy. They would expect they would need to do it very urgently, but somehow the date for that always slips to be just after Gateway is supposed to open. They said I think 2036 or 2037 is the absolute latest, and now Gateway's gonna. They say Gateway's gonna open 38, and they keep saying that they need to shut these down, but um yeah, okay, yeah. To make it very clear, standing tickets doesn't mean you're not allowed to sit. Standing tickets means a ticket without seat reservations. Now, bear in mind, if it's a rush hour trip and you're getting off and you're getting on at Trenton, the train is not going to get less crowded until you hit New York. It just means you're going to stand from Trenton to New York on a high-speed train. It is about 30 minutes. People stand longer than that on the E train every day with way worse crowding and way worse sway between Jamaica and wherever they get to in Midtown Manhattan. Um, the subway tickets too, they're standing tickets. They do not entitle you to a seat. You can sit if you want, if there are empty seats. Um, okay, play Discord. Is a transfer station worth it? I don't know. I keep not putting it in my crayon. It should be studied. Um, I believe it is actually feasible to install, in that the argument that they've made is not feasible is clearly false. They said that it is not wheelchair accessible, the ramp. So this is on an incline. The trains are already descending toward to be below the river, but they're descending at such a gentle grade, about 2%, I believe, that it's fine. Um, And now whether it's wise, I don't know. Like I don't know how much it would cost to build this. I so the thing is, if you build Gateway like if you build Alt-G like this, the station here doesn't help you very much. Where the station does help you is if you're building finally this tunnel, or I guess also this tunnel, and then yeah, you can do a transfer, a crossing stop at around 34th and Park or something like that. It's just that this is something that I always feel bad about, and the reason I feel bad about it is that the 4 and 5 trains don't make that stop. And I know it's kind of ridiculous, but the idea is that this line, the what I call as the blue line, line 4 in my crayon, should be an express version of the 456 to help decongest. So it's kind of it feels kind of weird to me if that stops at 34th and the 4 5 and then the 4 and 5 trains don't. Um, it's not an excellent reason, and as I said, it should be studied. I have not put it in the crayon, but it should be studied. It's just don't think about it as part of the scope for Gateway ever, please, please. Yeah, standing in a yeah. But generally, trains are much more comfortable to stand on than buses. This is something that I think a lot of people don't get when they compare train capacity with bus capacity. Because they think it's somehow awkward to compare bus seated capacity and train standing capacity. But no, actually, that's a comparable comfort levels. Honestly, in a lot of cases, I feel way more comfortable standing on a train than sitting on a bus. Um, So anyway, I promised I would talk about these issues with Gateway. This includes what it is, planning, costs, how it fits into broader planning in the region, um, and finally development. I did shit on, I don't even know which agency is making this decision, but on, let's call it the system. Like I'm an anarchist, and I'm about to join something at Crippy and throw rocks at things with them or something, and where the system, except Crippy are hardly Yimbys. No, let's be real. Where they are not building at Secaucus, which they should. This is not a protected wetlands. This should be residential towers. Maybe a shopping mall with residential towers on top. This is a warehouse. This should be residential towers, possibly with a shopping mall on the ground floor. This is a parking loop at the train station, or a Kissen. No, it has it has parking. Yeah. This. Can you guess what this should also be? Um, yeah, not this. And again, this is not a wetland. This is not wetlands. Um, the diesel from the buses and the gas from the cars pollutes way more than actual redevelopment would. Um, Same thing with all of these areas. This needs to be higher density. This is not really about Gateway. Gateway relates to development. It's just that they need to use this. They need to understand that if they get more capacity into New York, they should preemptively upzone near all of the stations on New Jersey Transit that are going to get better service to New York. This is, of course, most important, but also the stations on the Mars and Essex lines are probably the ones that get the most service because right now, because historically they didn't go to Manhattan, they only went to Hoboken. Hoboken was the historic terminal of the Lackawanna, formerly known as the Mars and Essex, and the result is that only in the 90s did they build something called the Kearny Connection, which lets these trains go to Penn Station, and so kind of they already had enough trains in the schedule here, and then they added some here, so it's kind of an awkward thing where around half the trains from the Mars and Essex lines still only go to Hoboken, and then half go to Penn Station. So there's going to be just much better service to New York when the tunnel opens, and again with full for tracks of capacity, not this kind of bullshit where they're only going to use it to do long-term shutdowns on a system that they can just work on one track at a time if they are better at timetabling. And the and so the upshot is more upzoning here. Some of these places are really desirable. Like South Orange is a very wealthy suburb. So yeah, let's look at the land use here. Yeah, this does not look like transit-oriented development. Yeah. I know I'm going to sound boring, but tall residential building with shopping mall on the ground floor. I mean, this looks like a new condo, but this is 4 floors, which is ridiculous. Try. I mean, in America, I guess they build out of wood, so it would be 7. It would be 6 or 7, and beyond that, it's high-rise codes. But consider 20. Um, why MetLife Stadium? Usually when we think about a station about something that can move, I'm thinking about Madison Square Garden, where yeah, I mean, if they are unhappy about, so bear in mind with Madison Square Garden, there have been some plans to move them from here to here, move them mid-block here, I guess, because these are, I guess, not sufficiently tall to be preserved. But honestly, if they move to the Meadowlands, which they have threatened to, and for some reason they can't move them here or something, then yeah, they can go to the Meadowlands, and there's going to be better train service. It's not that big a deal, to be honest. Um, the Meadowlands, it's not the Meadowlands. This is the Meadowlands. It's about the same distance from Penn Station that the Berlin Olympiastadion is from Friedrichstraße on the S-Bahn. Um, so the so again, just a lot of it would not be this, one grand TOD plan that's going to be horrifically expensive because a mayor, like a big city mayor or a governor, is going to be involved. Like Hudson Yards, it's going to be probably just the state mandating more housing construction envelope for the zoning near the train stations statewide. This is something that Jersey might actually do. Jersey does build more than the city. Jersey is, I think, the MBS northeastern state, which I know is a little bit like saying the least anti-Semitic Lithuanian, the um, least oblivious German, the least Islamophobic French person, and yet there are gradations in all of these places. So the so in Jersey, they do compel municipalities to zone for more housing. They don't tell them where, so often these municipalities deliberately zone for more apartments far from town center because the rich suburbanites do sometimes go to town center. Um, but this is all of it is something that can be compelled, and Jersey might actually be in a political position where it's normalized to do so. Um, and this is helpful. I mean, it's just annoying that the suburbs where the trains to Manhattan are under a fall, so Metro North, and this is the Metro North suburbs in Long Island, are extremely NIMBY. They build 1 unit per 1,000 people per year. Maybe now they've accelerated from 1 to 1.5 or something, but they used to build less than 1. Jersey used to build 4. And in Jersey City it's way more than that. So Jersey City, it's stuff that's not about Gateway but about Path, but they are building more housing. The city builds 2.5. The number you want to hit in the city that's desirable is probably about 10. So this is maybe 1.5 ish. It's about 4. It's 2.5. Should be again 10. DC is a city. Also, DC has an issue of having. I don't actually know how much the district is building. I know that the district is really bad at building at commercialization, where essentially uh, the only reason that they're getting anything is the federal government stays there essentially, so that reduces job sprawl pressure. But the district is kind of infamous for not commercializing very much. Um, okay, this is actually a not bad number or anything, but I mean, this is it's not this is not terrible, but it is uninspiring. Like the district is what 800, like 700, 800,000. Okay, this is about 700. So yeah, okay, they're hitting 7 last year, which is good. I mean, it's okay for the Northeast, but I mean, it's not amazing. And this is one city. And again, they need to commercialize better near city center and also build more high rises, and they don't do that. And yeah, New Jersey density has this thing where it's dense, but it is not dense with one big center. It's actually Jersey is way more suburbanized than the Netherlands. Um, the Netherlands does have strong centers in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and so on, and Newark isn't that at all. And the high rises in Jersey City are they exist. It's Manhattan spillover, but it's not. I don't think it's anything on the scale of maybe relative to high rise, but in job count and so on, I don't think it's anything on the scale of Amsterdam or Rotterdam. But anyway, yeah, that's my spiel about Gateway. Good project, done poorly, done extraordinarily poorly in a way that might actually endanger whether it's a good investment. Um, People involved clearly know very little about rail planning or good construction. I want to say they know very little about rail planning and good construction practices, but this is basically universally true in North America, where the railroad industry is its own thing, its own insular thing that is stuck in the 1950s. Construction is people who either are stuck in the 1950s or think that they're modernizing by privatizing the state because that's what they heard um, out of some consultants who think that the world consists of New York, London, Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai. Um, New York is the world's capital of high construction costs. London, Singapore, Hong Kong are all strong contenders for number two. Dubai is hard to say. Dubai only built one line. The costs were not amazing, not terrible. Meh. The other Gulf cities that are building more, like Doha, for example, Doha is a contender for second worst cost in the world. So yeah, it's just people who you know go shuttle between places where Anglo-American consultants are esteemed. All these places are terrible, and then they assume that this is how the world works because they don't got work in France, Germany, Korea, Italy, Sweden, Spain, Turkey. Where were they? I mean, places can do things perfectly fine internally. They don't need a generalist Ivy or Oxford grad. Yeah, this is where it's at. I will take questions for a little bit, and then we're gonna stop. Okay. Okay, I have no idea why this is an error, but I don't think it matters terribly that I don't have a Matryoshka. I have to reload just for the sake of it, but it's not that important. You know something? I don't know. I think it's DBM. I think it's DBM, but I am not 100% certain. Let me actually check because Gateway Project New York is it TBM or Immersed Tunnel? Yeah. Also, I'm seeing they're seeking a private project delivery partner. This is called privatization of the state, and this never works and always fails. Hire in house. There will be political responsibility. Take responsibility, or you will never have infrastructure. It's weird that there's like they're changing. So bear in mind, there is such a thing as a there is such a thing. Remember how I mentioned before that it's not exactly parallel. This is a good yeah thing about. As I said, it's on the other side of this reservoir. That's somewhat separated. and the and by the way, I do want to caution: there is an underwater construction premium because you need to switch rock type. It's just it's not the only place that has underwater tunneling. What are my thoughts about the argument that a Bergen Line Avenue station would overwhelm the line? Why would it overwhelm the line? Um, I don't actually get why it would overwhelm the line. Um, and the reason is that yes, the station is going to get way more ridership than any other, I expect. But first of all, just to be very clear, we can check how many people get to New York from various parts of suburban Jersey, and the shed of Bergen Line doesn't actually the shed of Bergen Line does not actually purely dominate. It's a large component, but it's not going to be dominant. Um, the second thing is, yeah, they're going to add more passengers on the line, but but this is going to be like a 3 minute trip between Bergen Line Avenue and Penn Station, and they can get trains that are mildly comfortable to stand on. I mean, nobody died from standing 3 minutes on a train. And when they get back, and when they get out, it's first come first served. It's possible that the people going to Bergen Line are going to get some seats, and then they're going to get off after 3 minutes, and then the people going to outer suburbs, yeah, they might stand the first 3 minutes of the trip, but not afterward. Again, nobody died from 3 minutes of standing on a train. An hour on a train standing, yeah, it's annoying. 3 minutes, who cares? Instead of creating an organization, would it be better off with a single infrastructure owner? I mean, Amtrak is for the most part a single infrastructure owner, not in New York because of Metro North, and that does create problems. But even where Amtrak is sole owner, Amtrak is terrible. Like the problem is not exactly who owns the infrastructure. The problem is that all of these people are abusive little shits. And yeah, when there's any conflict between different users of the line, they're mutually abusive, and they say, "Oh yeah, it's our dispatcher, so our trains have priority," as opposed to any kind of objective system of matching them of creating priority based on line-wide needs. But even when they're fully in control, like Amtrak is south of New York, they don't know how to run infrastructure or how to run trains. I don't know why on the map is not working. Um, so the issue is not like if you had people from from different branches of SBB or something, or ÖBB, or even NS, honestly, in charge of all these agencies, and you let them run things without idiot political micromanagers ahead of them, they would be able to make this work if one of them were designated as the manager of New York to DC and the other of New York to New Haven. It's just these. It's like it's not terrible structures. It's terrible people and structures that yeah encourage these terrible people, but you can't keep the terrible people. Is the problem. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is a good idea. It's a good idea insofar as you can use it to yeet all of the people currently running these agencies, especially the political appointees. But at Commuter Rail, probably the permanent managers are bad too, and replacing them with people who have heard of the expression "electronics and for concrete." The Matryoshka here is just frozen, but whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to. I mean, yeah, the Netherlands is terrible at infrastructure, which I think is it's way too much one-way learning from Britain. They're doing a lot of bullshit privatization of the state, um, as opposed to just the engineers figure things out type governance. But I mean, yeah, I mean, even the Netherlands does this better. And the Netherlands has the north-south line, which was yeah difficult to build, but they also did a poor job at it. It's just difficult to build in the Netherlands means $500 million per kilometer, and in America, I don't think anyone builds that cheaply. Like in London, 500 million a kilometer is a good number. In the Netherlands, it's a bad number. In America, it's a number that's too good to be true nowadays for subways, for urban subways. Are there other questions I should ask? It's a 2-hour recording so far. So. I mean, if you're on YouTube, you're seeing the numbers. Give it like 1 more minute and then we can stop if there are no further questions. There's a little bit of a lag, and I can't tell you what the lag is because usually I know what the lag is based on the lag between this and the time in the Matryoshka, but I don't currently have that. And again, other than lag measurement, which is not the most important thing in the world, it's so looks like it's over. So thank you all for watching. Please do check our website, which has all the other reports, and we'll have the overall report and the New York report in 6 days. Time to be determined. It will be announced on social media. It will be announced on Twitter. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Martha. Thanks, Annie. Thanks, Connor. Thanks, Accord. Thanks, Sprong. Thanks, Borners. Everyone else is watching. Who is Richly? So yeah, we'll see you. I'm probably not going to do another stream on Saturday. It does. There have been delays, but it gets released. Thanks, Play Discord. But it does get released, and yeah, I mean, we'll see how people react to that. I don't think I'm going to do a stream on Saturday. There's going to be a stream on Tuesday, and the report gets released on Monday, so I guess there's only one thing that I can stream about on Tuesday. So thank you guys, and see you in a week. Ciao, ciao.